Hello, and welcome to Temple of the Falls Pod, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I am Bruce.
And today we're gonna talk about something Bruce finally got to do. He got to play Commander Legends Draft.
It is about damn time.
And I hear you. Isn't this set made for Bruce? And yeah. So we finally sat him down and strapped his legs to the chair and made him draft. Yeah.
Right. For those who don't know, I'm a big multiplayer fan generally, which is fairly obvious by the podcast. But more importantly, I love the idea of a multiplayer draft. Now, I'm not a big draft fan where you then break off and do one-on-one games, simply because, I think in large part because I suck at drafting. However, multiplayer drafts are a whole different thing. Anytime I get to draft and then break out into pods of 4, I am all about that. And my entire play group has been about that for a very long time. So when the first Conspiracy came out, we literally were the target audience. There's no denying it. I'm still convinced that I have done more Commander drafts than a lot of people at Wizards who tested it.
Conspiracy
than a lot of people at Wizards who tested it. It was just, we played a lot. Cases worth.
Oh my God.
Not boxes, cases worth of Conspiracy. I think it's probably the set that I definitely have 4 of every common, probably all of the uncommons. And I've got multiple copies of just about every rare in the set, I think.
Oh, so, sick.
Yeah. It was... We played a lot. And with Conspiracy 2 and with Battle Bond, we played less, but not that much less.
Battle Bond was definitely the hard one.
Yeah. Of those 3, I mean, the difficulty for Battle Bond is that you're playing in teams. So when you draft it, you have to draft as either a 4-person draft or an 8-person draft, because you need the even numbers for the pairs. A 6-person draft is just not possible. Whereas Conspiracy, you could go from 4 all the way to 8.
Yeah.
And any number in between, you could do the draft. Now, obviously, like everything else, the ideal draft was going to be 8, but you could do it otherwise. So it meant that there were plenty of nights when we had 5 of us, and we were just like, no, we're going to draft tonight. And you'd pull out the box of Conspiracy and draft that up. Maybe you'd switch it up so you'd each draft 4 packs so you'd see more cards. But however it was, like all the Conspiracy drafts just meant that they were easier to draft. So we definitely drafted less Battle Bond than the others.
Yeah.
However, I love that style. I love the way that plays out. I like the idea that you've just drafted your cards. It really equalizes the power level, especially with a group when you're in a play group like that, where we're all getting relatively the same amount of experience with the cards, because we're all drafting at the same time.
Right.
So, I may have bought half of the cards we drafted, but I drafted only as much as everybody else. There might have been a couple extra drafts when I went to a Gen Con or somewhere else, but in the greater scheme of things, when we're talking about everybody drafting 18 times or something like that, one extra draft was not going to be the make or break as far as knowing how to draft it and getting the lock in on how to win these games. And on top of that, it also, when you're playing multiplayer, if somebody did draft that really good deck, you've got 3 opponents that are now coming after you. So there's also that balance. And all of that really were things that I really liked about this, and things that I was very excited to see in Commander Legends, because once again, here we are with a set that's going to let you break up into pods to play.
Yeah. And I think what I really liked about, what I like about multiplayer limited in general, and we've done a whole episode on it, so if you haven't heard that, go listen to that. But I think what I like the most about this is that it really shines a light on the design of multiplayer through like Wizards lens, where it's like they have a significantly higher number of cards as compared to a standard set that say, you know, and obviously this is kind of merging with more recent sets, but you've got cards that say all opponents or all players, and whether you know, it's your duels that come in untapped if you have more than one opponent, or I mean, you have plenty of things, especially we saw a lot in Battle Bond, at least kind of the start of this, where you like certain spells are more cooperative than competitive. So like, you know, you had the assist mechanic in Battle Bond, or I mean, a little bit more recently, Strixhaven had that one card that's like, oh, you and another opponent each draw 3 cards.
Yeah.
So you kind of see Wizards start to pull the strings on, like, all right, well, we're going to head more vaguely in the direction of not being so strictly 2-player game.
Right, and I think as we moved through the various sets, through these multiplayer sets, I think we started to see Wizards start to understand the limitations and the strengths of 4-player games. You know, you if you're not paying attention and you create a draft format, then you can very well be just stuck with a bunch of creature stalls where everyone's just sitting there waiting for one card to do something, to break open the stall, and you can create cards that aren't doing anything to help that. And then we saw Wizards move forward. I mean, you know, the most obvious version is the Monarch, where it really does, you know, emphasize the attack phase, where, you know, and combat being a relevant part of these games, and it's things like that where they've obviously learned from the past, where, you know, prior to that it was you know, a lot more ground pounders, a lot more they weren't pushing the combat aspect at all. And when you don't push combat in a multiplayer game, then you're getting 4 people who are sitting there waiting to combo. And at some point, somebody breaks through with a combo, or you get mass removal, and then everybody just restarts. It's just not. It wasn't giving you the right a good feel for the games. But they got better and better.
Oh, absolutely.
Better at it. So,
the few times that I did end up playing Battle Bond, I really liked it, for many reasons that we've mentioned previously. But I think that having played Commander Legends 1, I'm going to specify 1 because I think 2 comes out Friday of release. So that's exciting. But Commander Legends 1, having played it a couple times, I think one of the things that I like most about it is that it does solidify itself in being a draft format. So like, one of the things that I like about draft, especially with Commander in mind, is that, you know, you sit down at a table and you have to discuss, you know, like, oh, okay, like this is the power level of this deck, and this is like the ideal.
Yeah, it takes the rule 0 discussion out of play.
Right, because it flattens the playing ground.
Right.
For everyone, where you know, you're not worried about budget, you're not worried about, you know, who's playing.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yes.
Everyone starts with generally the same pool. You're starting with 3 packs unknown to you.
Right.
And going from there. Which is what I like about all limited formats, but especially in this case where, coming from a Commander background, I know how frustrating it can be when certain synergies kind of keep looping, and that's harder to do with this.
The downside to Commander Legends, and it's just, I think it's unfortunate, is that I think there were a whole lot of boxes that just got cracked without there being a draft, just because of the pandemic. I mean, it
came out literally the worst time possible.
Right. The one thing you really can't do when you're not in the same room with everybody else is draft. There's no way to pass those cards. So so I think a lot of these boxes just got cracked for the cards, which, don't get me wrong, the cards are great. I'm sure we'll talk about some of them along the way here. But I mean, my 2 boxes of Commander Legends sat downstairs in my basement for 2 years until I could finally get a chance to play them. In spite of the fact that I was then buying single Commander Legends cards. Because I wanted one of the cards to do something, or a commander or something like that. Right. But I wasn't willing to crack open
everything to find
all the packs that I had in the basement to find that, to miss out on a draft moment. So they sat there, and it's to be fair, our group's a little smaller, so we probably wouldn't have drafted as much anyway. But I certainly would have drafted earlier, and certainly would have drafted more often.
Definitely.
Than we did get the chance to so far. So,
and I think too, it's funny because, I mean, as much as they sat there, you did sneak a peek with a couple packs.
Well, when you've got a stalking tiger and you've got packs that hold 20 cards, what do you want? At some point,
it's beautiful.
I've got to take a peek. So something that kind of threw me when we started drafting the cards was I came into it very much with a conspiracy draft mentality. After you've drafted Commander Legends and you've drafted Conspiracy, the power level is just ridiculous. Conspiracy draft has virtually no power level at all in comparison. It's a much lower powered draft. So you go in with knowing you really got to keep to the archetype if you want your deck to perform. You have to, you really got to focus on the conspiracies. You need to focus on all of these little aspects if you really want the deck to hum. And even then, it's only humming at a 5, say. And, people who don't know how to do the draft or who are a little behind on that kind of thing, they're looking at 3s. Whereas Commander Legends, people who don't know what they're doing are still going to make a 6 or a 7. That's the sort of power level difference. And once you know what you're doing with Commander Legends, then you're looking at 9s. 9s and 10s in overall power level. To be fair, in the games that we played, I think my decks were a lot closer to 7 both times.
Nice.
But it was just... it was something that was very surprising to me. There were so many more options.
Yeah.
You'd fan that pack open, and it was just... There are so many good cards. There were so many good cards, especially early on when you weren't locked into a particular
definitely.
Commander or commander pair or whatever.
I think even then, though, like, what's nice about... So, like, I think even if you do find your commander early on... Right. Speaking from experience, it's very easy to force it.
Sure.
It's harder to do it with the 3-color commanders, but my first game or my first draft, I forced red and blue because I wanted red-blue pirates.
Yeah.
So I guess knowing the any of the archetypes going in kind of helps, but I knew that red-blue pirates was a thing, and I knew that if all else failed, as long as I had a red commander and a blue commander, they didn't have to be pirates. So having 2 picks per pack really helps kind of give signs.
Right.
And I think that with that idea, it helps. It helps with what you were just talking about, where newer drafters, people who haven't drafted as much, can kind of dig their heels into what they want to do with their deck.
Right. Now, having said that, I will say that even after drafting it one time, I went in without knowing any of the archetypes. But by the time I did my second draft, the whole aspect of it was just, I was dramatically improved. Because I felt like I knew some of the archetypes. Whereas before I went in blind, and honestly that first pack, the first round was just, I was all over the place. I was just picking whatever, not paying any attention to even trying to figure out what the archetypes were. I was just looking at the cards and picking what I thought were good cards. And then eventually fell into a color pair and still never really matched up the way, maybe the way I should have. But what I really liked was that, yeah, there's, you can streamline into that particular archetype. But there were also other, you could pick the offbeat commander and try something weird and funky that really isn't a perfect match with the archetype, but it would still make something that was kind of fun and offbeat.
Oh, definitely.
I like that as well. So it gave you plenty of options.
You can choose. What I like most is that you can choose a commander that you think you would never play outside of this. Like you can pick that. For instance, I could pick a Staxy commander and
sure.
You kind of go that one-offs. Stacks. Yeah,
it's a one-off. So you can play these weird archetypes that would normally your group would be like, whoa, or it's not your style at all, and you're never going to build that commander because you know that you got to go through all the trouble of building it, sleeving it. You've got to take a couple of nights, valuable nights when you could be playing a deck that you really love, and to try something different. And if you don't like it, then you're pulling it apart.
And then you have those cards and then you have those cards you're never going to play.
Right. So it's nice with a draft set like this where, yeah, I'll pick a format. I'll pick an archetype that I don't normally play, and I certainly did that. Where you just try something completely different. And it's also in formats like these where, I generally try and avoid tutors because I don't want to see repetitive play in my decks. Well, this is a draft format. If a tutor shows up, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Because why not? And you're playing with multiple you can play with multiple copies of the same card. That's one of the different rules for the Commander Legends draft. So you can do that, but to be fair, your deck is sort of, it's not going to be nearly as well tuned as any of your the decks that you put together yourself. But I feel like it's sort of all bets are off. I can try anything.
Yeah.
And I really like that.
Definitely. I think I definitely dipped my toe in some more spell-slingery things that have led me to build more spell-slingery type decks outside of this. Right. And it's definitely, it's an interesting thing. Ryan from CCO always says games are fleeting. If a game goes poorly, it's fine. There'll be another one,
right.
This especially, this is fleeting.
Yeah.
If you are doing something outside of your comfort zone and it's really making you uncomfortable, I can't believe that I played. I got nothing. If it's making you uncomfortable, it'll be done soon.
Right.
It's fine. And so that's what I like about this format, especially, and it makes me really excited for Commander Legends too.
Right. One of the things that I really noticed about this draft that struck me as being different from a lot of the other multiplayer drafts, you're building a commander deck, and in the greater scheme of things, that may not sound like a whole lot, but the level of restriction that it adds with both, Wizards clearly looked at this and said, okay, they're building commander decks, so we need to put a lot of legends in here. And they did that in spades. There's tons and tons and tons of them, to the point where I don't really believe it's much of a restriction in your deck building. I think the real restriction comes with there is no splash. So many draft decks that we build, you're focused around two colors. You get to the point where you're focused on two colors, and then this card comes around, and you're just like, wow. And you
I can't not play it.
I can't not play this. So you add it to your deck because that's your splash. and then you just build your mana base and make sure you can play that card.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these are commander decks.
Yeah.
You're not going to splash that card. There's no way to splash the card. There's no such thing as splash. Your commander is whatever colors you've chosen. So now when you get to that draft and you see that card that you really want to splash, well, now you've got the choice. Are you just going to take it from an opponent because you can't play it, or are you going to pick the card, the best card in the deck or the best card in this pack for your deck? And it brings a real interesting twist to things, because suddenly those splash cards are not nearly as valuable as they would be in the past. In the past, if you're looking at a pack of 8 cards and there's a splash card and you're thinking to yourself, is that really going to make it all the way around to me? No. So I'm going to pull it. Whereas in this one, it doesn't matter. All you're looking at are the other colors that really you have, and then making a decision, is there something else that I really don't want an opponent to have?
Right.
And when you consider half of the people that could pick that card are not going to be people you're playing against. It makes it it gives a very strong reluctance to block somebody from getting that card. I mean, let them put it in their deck and hope you don't face that person.
Yeah. And honestly, if you're coming across that card in like pack 2,
right,
maybe take it. I mean, like, if it's something that you want to play, like, you could potentially
right. I mean,
get
if it's something
your
that's
third
good,
color,
and if it's something that's good, if you're in pack 2, you may yet switch. It was interesting to me how, with a regular draft, a splash card has a certain value, and then when you can't include a splash card in your deck, suddenly that card's value goes down. And then it becomes you're even more reluctant to pick that card, because you're not going to play it. So, or the likelihood that you're not going to play it. I mean, maybe you do switch, but it was something that I really noticed in the draft. So,
before we get too specific about our drafting experience, let's throw it over to a commercial break, and then we'll be right back.
This episode of Temple of the False Pod is brought to you by Foil Jeweled Lotus.
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm that guy. I got it in the box. Yeah! Back to you, Andy.
Now we're back. Commander Legends sure is fun. Something we haven't touched on yet was you brought this up previously. It might have been in the scrapped episode. But the cool thing with Commander Legends is that there's so many artifacts. Colorless cards.
Yes.
And that really helps with the kind of filling out the deck.
Yeah. I know that. I mean, I just talked about how you'll be reluctant to take a splash card because you're not going to be able to splash it into your deck. However, especially once you've locked, the average deck is going to be a 2-color deck. Once you've locked into your 2 colors, then arguably 3/5 of the packs are going to be filled with cards that you are never going to use. But they really leaned into the artifacts, and it just means that, I mean, every artifact can go in any deck. So it gives you that alternate option. I found it very interesting, because there was more than once when I looked at it and thought, I can pick the 2 cards that are in my color, or I can take the artifact and 1 card in my color and hope the other one comes around. And I did that quite often when it was a card that had, say, two colors or 2 colored pips in the mana cost, because, well, no one's even thinking about, maybe I'll just take that off to the side a little bit. So it worked out fairly well. I got a couple of cards that came right around the table with like that. But
yeah, so I guess a tip for those who haven't played this. Don't be afraid to grab those artifacts. They definitely go earlier than normal, because I mean,
absolutely they do.
Because whether it's because people don't have their colors set or whatever. Or I think the biggest thing is that if you get a pack that has only has artifacts and then off-color cards, you're picking the artifacts anyway.
Right.
So go for artifacts early. And what I like too with not being able to splash is that when you inevitably get those cards off color, you're gonna have a much easier time cutting them from your deck, which is always the hardest part for me.
Yeah.
To like figure out, all right, what do I cut?
Right.
So anything off color is pretty easy.
I think the other thing that we noticed, and I will be interested to see how this goes with Baldur's Gate, because we'll see how it pans out. But I went into this with knowing that I had to build a commander deck, and knowing I needed to have a commander, or else I was going to have to take one of the
prismatic piper.
One of the prismatic pipers to fill out the colors. So at least for the first pack or so, I think I overvalued commanders. I gave them, I treated them as though they were better cards than a lot of the other cards in the set. And I think I picked, at least early on, I picked a couple of commanders thinking, if I'm going to go into that, at least now I'll have the commander. I don't have to worry about it. There was no reason to worry.
No.
There were so many commanders. I don't believe anybody in either of the drafts that we did even came close to needing any of the prismatic pipers that were pulled. I mean, it was just there were so many commanders, and so many of them had partner that if you had if you were looking at any two colors, give it 3 or 4 draws, and eventually you were going to see a commander of that color. Now, maybe it wasn't the best one for that color, but it worked out. I mean,
you could then end up playing that color,
right? And in both of my drafts, I had different choices of what I could use as my commander, just because I had repeated, more than one copy of it. I think for my second deck, I drafted 2 different mono blue partner cards and 1 mono red partner. And then I also had a blue-red commander as well. So I had all kinds of options, and that was not an unusual thing. And for the second draft, I didn't pull them until it was late in the second pack. And then I got another one in the third pack just because I thought it would go well in the deck, and it also gave me that second option. So
I think that might be where being somewhat experienced in draft would come in handy, because I don't see anybody that we drafted with even coming close to using a prismatic piper.
Right.
And I think with that, it kind of, I wonder the circumstances in which you would. I think there's 2 off the top of my head that I can think of. One being somebody at your table recognized the signals you were sending and cut you off of that color for whatever reason.
Right.
Which, the second being, you're not reading everybody else's signals and you're drafting the same deck 3 other people are.
Right.
So it's very tough because you are just being bombarded with legendary creatures. And I think because you are being bombarded, it's easy to just kind of either wait or I could really use this commander. Just grab it early and then move on from there.
I really felt like with the prismatic pipers that in the end I was going to use them more to partner them with one of the early partner cards out of the commander decks. So the 2 color partners from a ways back, with the idea being Timna. How cool would Timna be with a third color that wasn't one of the Timna colors? You know, take your pick with any of those. And I appreciate that a lot of people will just, you know, no, I'm pairing Timna with this other hugely powerful partner,
right?
And to get a super deck, like, yeah, that's great. How cool would it be to do a black, red, white Vial Smasher? And now you can. What I later realized, especially after I was sorting the cards, was if you really want to do that, then use one of the white partners.
There's like 2 or 3 of them at least.
Yeah, and
they're all uncommon.
A lot of the uncommon ones, you know, your partner gets some benefit,
right?
Or your commanders get some kind of benefit. You know, whatever. I'm not going to try and pull it out of my head, but which makes it again better than just, you know, having this card and setting it up. But it was certainly an option that initially that I thought was half the reason for it. In the end, I don't feel like, you know, unless you're doing something truly weird with your commander decks, I don't know that you're really going to be using the Prismatic Piper very much.
Yeah.
But
because I think,
it's there just in case.
I think, you know, all else fails, use just a different legend in that color.
Right.
But I guess I understand that there is a small chance that may not happen. Like maybe you don't have that color commander, which sure. But I think the Prismatic Piper ended up just kind of being there as like a way to not be like terrified and anxious during the draft.
Yeah.
Like knowing that is there as a fallback.
Right.
To have a plan that you can just enact if need be. You don't have to worry about like, oh my god, I'm not getting my color.
Right.
But it seemed to have been all for naught, really.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see what they end up doing with Commander Legends 2. I mean, even at the time of recording, they've announced most of the set. I really haven't been looking too much into the details, but
right.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Let's talk specifics. So
Sure.
My first draft, I forced pirates. So I just kept gobbling up pirates as they came. I picked any card that said pirate on it,
Sure.
you know, Pirate's Cutlass,
Yeah.
whatever. I wanted to do pirates. And knowing that, you know, you've got Malcolm, you've got Breaches, you've got Dargo, you've got Captain Vargas Wrath or something like that.
Yeah.
You've got the one lady that flies and steals things out of your hand to hit you with it and then give it back to you. I can never remember her name.
Don't remember.
Her name's like Dana or something. Anyway, and then I think Beckett Brass is one of the rare commanders in that set, but I think it's like an etched foil rare.
Right.
But
ooh, speaking of which, real quick, the etched foils are spectacular. They just look awesome. I realize the regular foils curl up, and yeah, my regular foils did curl. Not too bad, but they did. But the etched foils, they don't curl, and they just look amazing. They just stunning. I really like that.
yeah,
All right, sorry.
it's fine.
Right back to you, Andy.
I remember coming up to pack 3 being like, okay, I do have a red commander and I do have a blue commander, but I would love for them to be pirates. Granted, you know, my wish came true when I got Malcolm and Breaches, and it was a mighty fine deck, lots of interaction, a lot of fun to just like really play into that campiness of pirates in my pod. Very swingy, lots of times that I was the threat, and then very much not so, very quickly. It was a lot of fun. And I think what that kind of is the result of, it's the result of, I mean, like all the Monarch cards. There's a lot that are pirate themed, which is great, but also like it's everywhere. It's everywhere in this set.
Yeah, they pushed the Monarch hard, and I think in part because they really wanted to make sure that there was plenty of combat. They want people turning their creatures sideways, so they're not creating these massive creature stalls. So, there was a lot of Monarch,
and I love it. Honestly, there were times that people in my pod made the decision to attack any given player if they had the Monarch. Like, there were times that I wasn't the threat, but I was the Monarch, so I was being attacked. Sure. And it was amazing. It was fantastic.
Because the card draw was just there. You wanted it.
And the best thing, I mean, I'm gonna be very big about this statement, but the best thing that came out of so much Monarch were the courts. Right. And I love that they took the idea of a Monarch and used a lot more modern and newer, recent, I guess, sensibilities and kind of paired them together. You know, we've got things like blood tokens, we've got things like food tokens, and I mean, even to an extent, treasure tokens, where if they're used in a certain way, or, you know, some creatures are like, oh, if you have X number of whatever, then X happens.
Right.
So, like, these three types of tokens are generally being used in more than just what they say on them. For instance, the Cauldron Familiar food.
Yeah.
You sack a food to get it back out of the graveyard. Cool.
Yeah.
There are plenty of things like that. Guillaume, you sack food or something and makes things indestructible.
Yeah.
And what I love about the cycle of courts is that it takes that sensibility and uses it on the Monarch. So it's, you know, the court cycle is something happens at the beginning of your upkeep, but if you're the Monarch, it's like more.
Right.
For instance, Court of Ire, you deal 2 damage, you shock target. If you're the Monarch, you deal 7 instead, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
It really incentivizes your opponents to attack you.
Right.
And if you've got a pretty sturdy board state already, then you're going to be dealing 7 to something.
Right.
I had a game recently, I had Court of Ire out. I think it went around 3 or 4 times before I lost the Monarchy. Granted, it might have been because I got it out so early, but never a bad thing.
No, never a bad thing. And that's the sort of thing that was running. I mean, it was almost comical to me because there were a number of times during the games when I had a card that would make me the Monarch, and I just held it. Like, no, I'm currently the Monarch. I can play this creature out to protect myself so that I can continue to be the Monarch, or I can just wait because somebody's gonna take it.
Yeah.
And then I'll just take it right back, just by playing the creature that makes me the Monarch. And there were so many cards in the set, so that quite often that was a good way to become the Monarch, was just simply to play one of the cards that makes you the Monarch, as opposed to trying to get in to do combat damage. When you get a cards like Court of Ire or any of the courts, you got to go after that person.
Oh, absolutely.
That you cannot let them. They cannot be allowed to hang on to that.
Yeah, at worst, player removal.
Right. You make it work. So it was. I thought that was a pretty good, a pretty good setup.
Yeah,
the way things worked. So,
because what's better than drawing a card at the end of turn? Literally anything in addition to it.
Right. Yeah, you're just getting a bonus.
Yeah.
And it allows them then to change the mana costs on them, to do all sorts of other things. And then you can, then you get into areas where it's, if you're not the Monarch, here's a bonus. Or here's something that happens that can help you get the Monarch back, or whatever. And I love that Wizards went down that path and started looking at those kind of cards as well. So it was very nice.
So to date, you have drafted Commander Legends 1.
Yeah.
Twice.
Yes.
Do you have any stories? That's what we're about here.
To be fair, the first draft, I had a great time. Got to pick some cool cards, and I remember very little about the game itself. We had a lot of fun. It wasn't one of those. I mean, I didn't win the game, and it wasn't a game that really stuck out to me as, in that particular. Was that the one where we broke up into groups of 3?
Probably.
Because I know in the second one we played, we definitely broke up in groups of 3 because it was you and me and Kyle.
Right. The first one could have been 3. I think we had
because we had 10 for that one, didn't we?
Yeah. So
it was 3,
I think we had
3,
10
4?
for both, probably.
Maybe.
We definitely had 10 for the
So
second
I'm
one.
trying to remember. I'm trying to remember who I used as a commander for that one.
My first one I forced mono red.
Yeah.
Which apparently I didn't need to do because nobody else was drafting red at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Which is interesting to note because I think I should have seen a lot better card selection for mono red if I was the only person drafting it, but things probably got picked up here and there, and then somebody probably decided not to play red.
Yeah.
I think you went blue-white flyers.
You're right, I did. Yes, because I used Essior and who was my white commander? I don't remember.
I know the second game you chose Essior and Dargo. Because I remember you were chipping in early with Essior.
Yeah, and I had a couple other options as well. But yeah, the blue-white flyers, and it worked well. It was effective. It just wasn't as effective as it could have been. I overcommitted a couple of times because I felt like I had to, and then got burned. But
hey, it happens.
Yeah, in the greater scheme, it was a good game, and I enjoyed the draft. So that was all that really mattered. The second game was a little different. The second draft was a little different.
And honestly, that draft was the biggest inspiration for this episode.
Yeah. So with the second draft, we worked it out, and we didn't have enough cards.
Stupid stalking tiger.
We didn't have enough Commander Legends cards. I was more than just one pack short. But we looked at it and decided, okay, so if everybody gets 2 packs of Commander Legends, then we need to throw something else in. Given the scenario and given the a gift of Conspiracy, of a box of Conspiracy, it just made sense to use Conspiracy cards. So we opened up that box, or had we already opened it? I don't remember. But what we did was everybody got 2 packs of Commander Legends, and everybody got 2 packs of Conspiracy. But when we opened them, we opened Commander Legends first, then both of the Conspiracy packs. So you
nice
open them
30
both,
card.
a 30 card pack, basically shuffled it all up and treated it as though it was one Commander Legends pack. And then we finished the draft with another Commander Legends pack. So what this ended up meaning was conspiracies came into play. The second pack maybe not as strong, but it also didn't have as strong an artifact theme. So there were a lot more cards of the colors that you were looking for if you knew what colors you were in based on that. The draft also meant that if you were cutting a color, because that's the color you were picking in the first pack, it was unlikely that your opponents were then going to start picking that color in Conspiracy because the Conspiracy packs just aren't as strong. The creatures aren't as strong. The cards aren't as strong. So it really weakened the ability of players on that side to do anything about what you were doing. So if you were cutting a color hard, they weren't really going to get back at you because you weren't really losing out a whole lot. But honestly, the double conspiracy pack was more about messing with the draft.
Right.
Yeah, and all the conspiracy cards that go with that. And you could also just... what else was there? It was between the conspiracy cards and just everything else Conspiracy Draft does with letting you pick extra cards and doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was... I think it was such an enjoyable experience, if only because it's like a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
Oh, yeah. I
mean,
it was bizarre. Bizarre in a really good way.
Right. It's just up our alley, where it is for the social aspect of it. Granted, we started at 11 p.m., so, like, anything goes. And because we had this Frankenstein's monster of a draft experience, we had to make some rules on the fly.
Right.
Such as having 2 packs as your middle pack. Cogwork librarian type things where it's like, all right, so like, it essentially takes place of a pick.
Yeah.
Does it take place of 2 picks or does it take place of 1? Because you're taking 2 out of each pack.
Right.
And I think we ended up saying that it only takes 1 because,
I think so.
You have to keep the number of cards the same and so on and so forth. And it ended up making these really weird calls where, like why would anybody ever think that you had to think of this way?
Yeah.
And it just it definitely solidified more of like what I love about multiplayer draft, where you like, I don't know, like it's so kitchen table-y of, we had 10 people sitting around a table at 11 p.m. to draft this made up format to then, 2 of the games got done. So like, we probably finished drafting around midnight. 2 of the games finished by 1. I think the last game finished by like 2:30.
2:30 or 3. Yeah. And these were 3-player games because we had 9 of us playing.
Oh, 9. Yeah.
So yeah, our game finished relatively quickly.
When you cascade into 3 scaled worms, it's gonna end quickly.
Yeah.
Whether it's in that person's
in their favor or not.
Yeah. I think, unfortunately for Kyle, we ended up stealing those scaled worms and flinging them or something. But amazing, just amazing place where, like, why would you cascade into a scale worm, or how would you cascade into a scale worm otherwise?
Right. Yeah.
So
it was a blast.
Yeah. Highly recommend just throwing together weird formats like that. Because, after all, they are similar. Like, they're focused on multiplayer experience. They're focused on somewhat draft matters. Obviously, Conspiracy is more draft matters. But I'd love to see what it would be like to maybe in that middle pack do a Battle Bond or something. Granted, Battle Bond has more of the cooperative feel, but
when it comes down to it, when Baldur's Gate comes out, it's going to be a question. I think the first question in my mind is going to be, can you draft them together? Will that work? Are we looking at archetypes that are significantly different than what from Commander Legends to Baldur's Gate, or are we looking at what would stop that from working? Because I'm no fool, but I'm going to draft Baldur's Gate at least once just by itself. But at some point I'm going to have 2 half boxes of these 2 sets, and it's just going to make sense to mix and match.
Yeah.
So
What I'm excited for Baldur's Gate is that like they have kind of learned from Partner as a mechanic. It just kind of is busted.
Yeah.
And especially if you continue adding to it.
Right.
Like adding to it will never bring the power level of Partner down.
No.
So they're like adding in kind of like you're partnering with an enchantment.
Right. Now, I haven't looked at the set.
Yeah.
Can you partner with an enchantment that's not the same color as your commander?
I think that's the idea.
Okay.
I think the idea is
that's how they're going to.
That's how you do the 2 color or 3 color. So it would be interesting to mix a partner set and I forget what it's called, background.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to keep my hands out of the previews as much as possible, just so that I can go into the draft experience being like, whoa. But I know from what I've seen, it is a bit higher. It's splashy, big boomy plays, but like for a lot of mana. And that's what I'm really excited to see. Because it's not quickening things.
Right.
And I think overall that'll be beneficial to the health of the format.
I agree.
So I can't wait for Commander Legends 3. I can't wait for Battle Bond 2. I can't wait for Conspiracy 3. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep them coming.
Yeah.
Keep them
please,
coming.
Please do. And I think that the popularity of even Commander Legends withstanding the circumstances, I think really goes to show how passionate the Commander community is, and probably showed Wizards that it's a good product. Keep it coming. Got anything else?
I think that's it.
I think so too.
We need to go play some Magic.
We gotta go play some Magic. So that'll do it. That'll do it for us tonight. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for hanging out. We're Temple of the False Pod, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
Friday, Baldur's Gate comes out, I think, if I did my math right.
Friday! I'm so excited!
Yeah!
We're on a Friday that's several weeks farther out than you're hearing it right now, but yay, Friday!
And it'll be another, probably a week before we actually get to draft it, but at least. So, anyway. Thank you again for listening. Have a great night, and may your 5th land be the Temple.
Bye!
Wait. Before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter at falsepodmtg. Bruce is at ManaBurned, and I'm at Andy Weekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, like, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your 5th land be the Temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!